Yep, so you can't see exactly.
Okay, this is the third and final operating budget meeting with the Boards of Selectmen and Finance. Today is Thursday, January 28th, and the first item on our agenda is an audit review with Scott Bassett from McLeodry. Scott?
Good evening. My name is Scott Bassett. I'm a partner now, formerly McLeodry RSM. We changed our name, I guess, in the middle of the fall, but no change in the firm structure or anything like that. Just a pure name change. We conducted the audit for the town of Woodbridge for the year ended June 30th, 2015. We issued an unqualified, unmodified, clean opinion this year. As part of our audit, we take a look at your internal controls. Although we don't opine on the internal controls, we certainly would report to you any deficiencies that we see as part of our testing. The town did not receive any management comments or deficiencies noted during the course of our audit. This year, we had talked about implementation of GASB number 68 for the last couple of years. GASB 68 had to do with pension plans. The town participates in the state plan and a cost-sharing multiple employer plan. And this year, the town was required under GASB 68 is to bring in their proportionate share of the liability of that plan. That plan actually is pretty well funded at a level of 90% at the state level. But the town had to bring in approximately, I believe it was $3 million or so, $3.2 million worth of a liability onto its full accrual basis of accounting financial statements. Those are the statements you don't see from Tony's reports on a monthly basis, but that was a big impact, or a significant change. Added disclosures to your financial statements, so your statements are probably 6 or 7 pages longer this year than they were in the past. Included in that also with GASB 68, although the town has no associated liability regarding the Connecticut Teachers Retirement Plan, we had to bring disclosures in about that plan and so on. But no liability made its way to your balance sheet, just pure disclosure regarding the Teachers Retirement Plan. A little unusual activity for the town was the increased debt obligations and ban issues and some bond issues that happened after year end. At the end of the year, you had approximately $10 million in short-term borrowings out there. So if you look at your total general fund, or excuse me, your governmental fund balances, it's in a small deficit situation, but that will be reversed as soon as the bans turn to long-term borrowings and make a way through there. Right now, the correct accounting for bans are short-term. They sit up in your balance sheet as a liability. The general fund balance remained at a healthy balance of 10% within the policies that you manage. Again, I think it's always positive as you manage that fund balance from year to year. And there was no other surprises, I'd say. It was pretty much a quiet year as far as expectations go during the course of the year. So overall, the town, no audit adjustments were posted from the records that Tony and his staff gave to the team, which I always will comment on every year regarding about the information that you receive on a monthly basis being accurate and timely. I think that's really, really important as you make your decisions during the year. So overall, a good year. A year as expected, I'd say. No surprises in your general fund balance as far as going up and down. We did implement the 2 new standards. We did audit the federal and state programs with no items being noted. So a good, clean year. I could go more, but I know a lot of times you like me just to hit the highlights.
Okay, anybody have a question for Scott?
No.
I would just comment, I know when your staff is here, they are so diligent and here for so many hours and so many days, so it gives me great confidence in your conclusions because I see the effort that they put in. So
Thank you
for that.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Is Tony going to win another award?
Tony, I think I don't know. How many are you going to win? About 15, Tony? Yes, I think he's going to do all right.
Scott, out of curiosity, how many towns, cities win this award or apply for this award? Don't go crazy.
So there's 169 communities. I would say less than half do it. And I think it's there's almost 80 GASB standards now. So the award is getting harder and harder to obtain because the standards, they just don't stop. I mean, you know, there are 80 standards. We'll have a few to implement here in the next few years. The big one will be similar to the pension plan, what we have to do for other post-employment benefits. That will be one that comes in. But yeah, it's about half, and it's not as many, you know, a lot of the larger cities do it. Obviously with more staff, they have the ability to do it. But no, I think it's good because it adds more transparency and more information out there to the taxpayer, the user of the financial statements. And as I always say, Tony writes a narrative, that MD&A, that's about 8 pages of narrative in the front of the booklet, which instead of going through the 200 pages, I'd suggest people go there first and then go back to the detail, because that really explains what happened with the town during the year, talks about fund balances and things of that nature.
And you did say 10% fund balance. I think you used the word healthy.
I would say it's within. I always think 10 balances is within the range, because everybody will ask me, where do you think that range should be? And I would think you're right where if Tony goes to the rating agencies, they're going to look at that fund balance and say you're in the appropriate range as far as the fund balance. But I do think it's more important to manage the fund balance instead of going peaks and valleys, to manage that. You know, some years you're going to have good years, some years you might not have a good year, but managing it and being cognizant of it as you go through your budget deliberations are important.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another year out of the way, Scott.
Thank you.
How many years has it been now?
I don't know. I was probably a lot younger though.
A lot. Okay, next on the agenda is the police department, tab 1210.
I'm hoping I'm that short.
Well, basically what we want to do is just, if you want to just highlight where it's zeros and whatever, and small increases or whatever, just highlight the differences in your budget from a year ago to now.
Okay, there's only, I think, 3 areas that really, you know, I can address, and that one would be overtime. I know that's always a concern. I can tell you that a lot of the overtime was associated because of shortages. For the first since July of last year through today, we were down 6 officers, 3 on workman's comp and 3 officers that we had to hire. Right now, we're almost at a point in March we're going to be only down 3 officers. So taking that in consideration, that's a good portion of what our overtime is, that shortage. And then you look up at officers' wages. Hopefully we'll be able to offset with the monies that weren't spent because of those salaries. Normally I wouldn't compare those two, but in this instance where we were actually down 3 officers, it did actually affect the overtime, probably in the area of about $45,000 to $50,000. Any questions on overtime?
Yeah, I guess I do. Deputy Stewart, I'm looking at the projections for this year's budget, and it looks like you're projecting a 30% increase total on overtime
Correct.
over this year. 30% additional next year. You foresee that coming?
Well, yeah, we're probably going to be in 120 because we're still going to be, after we get through, we're still going to be down 3 officers going into next year. I mean, there's going to be some attrition. We have to anticipate, other officers leaving, and that's basically why I kept that increase.
Okay.
Well, according to this, you're actually projecting to spend 150 this year. Right?
Well, that's for the present year.
I understand that.
Yeah, the question was actually for the following year.
I understand that. That's
Okay.
why I'm bringing it up, because it's actually a reduction from what you're actually spending this year.
I don't see that.
A reduction.
Well, you're anticipating spending 150 this year, and you're budgeting for 120 next.
Oh, correct.
Your original budget
yeah,
was 90.
16, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 30%.
Well, I wasn't trying to trick you. I was just trying to.
Oh, no,
Tony said your increase. I'm saying you're actually decreased from what you actually spent. this year.
Oh, yes, going into the
increase
next fiscal year.
over
Correct.
what you projected, right? And then you had 6 officers down, so you ended up with
Correct.
more.
Of course, you don't know how many times the banks are going to get robbed, or if the gun shop gets blasted again, so.
God forbid.
And the use of an officer is just used more and more today for all sorts of things that, people want, whether it be a meeting like this or any meetings associated with the town, that officers would be actually asked to be part of. We have an election year coming in, and there's going to be more use of officers. But I just wanted to make it clear that most of the shortage, or most of the cost was associated this year with shortage, and going a little bit into next year. One of the other lines that I wanted to bring attention to you is 53,510, which is repair and maintenance, machinery and equipment. It's just the increase of our warranties that we have on our equipment, our non-structural equipment that's in the building. We've added equipment into the building. We through the JAG grant, we purchased a recording system, for interviews that was required by the state. Other than them paying the $22,000 it cost to put the system in, there's the cost of the yearly maintenance, and that comes into this year too. Then there was some significant changes in some of the warranties. Our radio warranty went up $500. That's a significant change. And then right down the board on increases. So that's why that went up $5,000. Any questions on that line? And one of the other lines that I wanted to bring attention to is we did go up a little bit in cell phones, but that is just because we're starting to see that we're going to use iPhones more. The standard flip phone that the officers used to use, or a lot of our command staff, we're replacing with iPhones, and there's a little bit of a cost increase there. And then the last one, to the good, and I can give benefit to Tony on this one, is tires, oil, and gas. Obviously, the prices that he gets there, that reflects my budget, obviously. I can give him an award on that one. But 55,223, electric street and stoplights. We have a line in that where we pay for the repeater. Its location is electric bill down on Bradley Road. And we've been paying it for several years now. Probably, in my recollection, probably in 6 or 7 years. It's usually right around that $8,000 mark. It's going up a little bit. But this year I want to actually budget for it in our budget instead of outside it. It was always paid for and identified in my budget, but I never budgeted for it. And reason being is that it looks that there's a possibility that we're going to be looking to keep that location down on Bradley Road. It's a possibility, and then I just wanted to, I talked to Tony about it and said, let's put it in there, and so I put it in the budget. Those were the 3 or 4 significant increases in my budget. If you had any other specific questions on any of the other lines. Most of the contractual lines, there's no real big increase now because the union or the bargaining unit is actually in negotiations right now, so we don't see any increase in payroll salary or anything like that.
Sorry, for the staffing levels, is your goal to maintain the levels that you've had for the last couple of years? And I want to ask you about that too, because I know there were questions that you were going to answer through a study, and we haven't seen that study. I know you and I have talked about it, but I think it would be good to sort of say the basis of your numbers now and what's happening with the study.
Yeah. Right now, I have no intention or reason to believe that I want to add another officer to the department. Yes, we are in the process of doing that, but in the process of doing that, we found out that our software does not compute the information that we want to accurately give us the information that we need for the Wilson-Weiss study that was suggested back in February of last year. I've contacted Charlie Sherwood. He's aware of it. I know that you requested a letter from him. He said it wasn't something that he could just put in a couple of sentences. He said he will give us a detailed explanation of why they had to put a hold on it. We'll basically go from there. The reason being is that Ansonia was going through the same study as we were, Ansonia PD. They went through the study. They acquired all the information and documentation that they needed through their CAD system. And a lot of this is officer-generated times, whether it be one officer on an assignment or multiple officers on assignment. And that's basically what the study gets all its feedback from, is the time spent by the officer. And there's a lot of other variables in there. But those were the two major factors. And the system can't break down that. The CAD system can't break that down there. And they're trying to work with the company and to work the software so it will give us the accurate information. Otherwise, it'll be inflated. They realized that it was inflated information that they were given, and it just wouldn't be accurate. It actually would benefit the police department, but I don't want to come here and show you something that's not accurate. And that was the reason Charlie, stepped back and he says, I just can't provide you with that information right now.
I don't know if the overtime for dispatchers is also down from projected. Does that have to do with, and that's not related to the officers coming back, is it?
No. That's what
just
we're
your
down. We're
estimate?
down a dispatcher right now, and hopefully we're going to be getting another one in that,
Okay.
and that will reflect
Thank
a
you.
lower salary as well as but it's going to be a time period before we can fill that position.
54210, communications and telephone. Budgeted 30,000 for last year. You're projecting to spend 26.7 and budgeting 30 again.
Over the past years, I've kept a surplus in there. We do not have a telephone contract. We have had, in recent past, we've had a lot, especially because of the changeover from AT&T to Frontier. We've had issues with the telephone. We've always had a buffer there for that purpose, because we don't have a contract with Frontier right now either.
53520. 12.5 across the board, and now you're budgeting 12.875. Can you explain why the 375? I know it's small money. I'm just trying to understand what's in your mind that we need that extra $375.
Anticipate maintenance on the vehicles.
Okay.
We have several older cars, the Crown Vics, we still haven't replaced yet. Again, I can go back to the idle mileage and the actual mileages on the cars. The mechanical portion of the car is being used a lot more today than it ever has been. And again, I can emphasize, you can go out there any day during the day, and you can see there's not a fleet car out there. They're all out on private duty jobs.
I don't doubt that. I just wondered where 370 seems like an odd number, but
It's just rounded up.
it just seems like, how do you anticipate?
Sometimes when I do it, I'm computing it all up, and I just give it to
13,000, you
Janice.
probably wouldn't get a question.
Yeah.
Probably not.
What is the uniform?
I'm that accurate.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, but somehow.
What is the allowance per officer for the uniform allowance annually?
$925.
$925?
So Ray, one more for me.
Nope.
And you might have answered it in a space, but 50220, police officers. Budgeted $1.4 million, spent $1.2 million, and budgeting $1.4 million again. So why the difference between the request for this year versus the actual projected spend for last year? Maybe tell me that. Okay.
So, historically, the police department's not at full complement.
Correct.
We budget the salaries at full complement, because that's what the number of positions that are budgeted for. That's what the union has in their staffing. But oftentimes it's not at full complement, which has experiences a savings in the police officers line. So oftentimes during the budget process, overtime is reduced in the process, understanding that you may be a little short in overtime, but you'll have some surplus in the salary officers line.
Yeah, I can understand that, except, yeah, okay.
So that's, if you're reducing the police officer salary line, it appears as if you're cutting a position.
Okay, I understand.
Worst case scenario for salary,
And then
if they're short some, we go up on overtime.
Correct,
We
you just save it
on.
on the overtime rate. And that's historically has worked.
So as we sit here tonight, you're short 3?
2 right now,
2.
2.
And are those 2 out on comp or
Nope,
something?
nope, we're just processing them
So
through
there's
right
nobody
now.
out right now?
Yeah. I actually had one just leave on the 22nd on a disability retirement, and I have another one leaving on the 29th,
Well, it's a retirement.
tomorrow, on a disability retirement.
What
That's an
happens-
opening, that'll be short.
What happens when someone gets injured and goes out on comp? How long, in other words, you can't fill that position, obviously, right?
Yeah. Up to
How
15
long-
months.
15 or 50?
15 months.
So if they don't come back in 15 months, then you can, what? Say,
Well, we could process them back in the system if they can pass the
they're not ready to
medical.
come back
Not
in
necessarily.
15
You have
months.
to- You either have to be, the position has to be at maximum medical improvement, means they're not gonna get any better, or there has to be a light duty assignment, and then the officer can come back on light duty. But at the end of 15 months, we no longer make them whole.
Okay.
So
Correct.
through 15 months, the town makes the officer whole. That means that the difference between what comp reimburses the town and what the officer makes, the officer is made whole. After 15 months, the officer is no longer made whole. That's what the 15 months is.
So you're gonna be looking to hire a couple?
Correct. We're actually looking to hire one certified. We found out that if we can accomplish that, get a couple of certified with a couple of recruits, it's an offset of talent, experience, and because you know that you get somebody that's retired and wants to do 10 years here, it's a home run. And then it's the same on the same respect that if you have somebody that comes on and wants to spend 25 years here, it's good too. But we've been fortunate that we've had a pretty good balance, and it's really helped out the department, especially a small department like this where you don't want to be putting young kids right out of the academy and, on the road.
I have one question, just probably historical. Dispatchers, do you still have 2 every shift or try to? I remember when I was on the fire commission way back when you tried to institute that policy and keep it going, and I just wondered, now that you're down one, is that impacting
No.
that?
There's not a dispatcher on every shift too, all right?
Okay.
And if one book's off, obviously there'll be one
Right,
there.
right.
We try to keep we have 6 full-time dispatchers. We're actually down one right now, but we try to keep 2 dispatchers on, the primary shifts that, during the day, during the evening hours. Midnights is strictly, one dispatcher. On the weekends, we try to put them on the evening shift where we find that there's more of a workload. Because it can get busy. Even though we're a small town, it can get busy in the requirements that the dispatchers are required to do today. I mean, they're doing fire dispatch, police dispatch, and emergency management dispatch. So that's a big,
It's one busy
big responsibility.
One-armed paper
Yeah.
hanger, right? And I juggle it all, sure, okay.
Those
Thanks.
dispatchers are all civilian?
all civilian.
I have 3 questions. No particular order, but my first question is the Special Services Vehicle, the SSV. I read what I could, that you detailed that it'll allow you to use equipment that you can't use in other vehicles, that type of thing. Can you tell me what the SSV?
Well, the SSV, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, the SSV is going to be a vehicle that, if we have to go out to an accident scene, there's quite a bit of equipment that has to be taken out to an accident scene by the accident investigator. It has all the electronic stuff, and it will fill the back of a pickup truck. All right, right now we have to throw it in the back of either the Humvee or it could be one of our SUVs. But you're throwing it on top of all the equipment that they already have in there. So it's a space saver. When we go to the range, there's an awful lot of equipment that has to be brought to the range. All the targets, all the all the ammunition, all the long guns that we bring to the range. So it's that, and then you're not taking 4 or 5 cars to the range. Actually, you're taking a vehicle that'll hold 4 or 5 officers. So it's a special vehicle in that respect. And then, on any given night where we're doing emergency management, and we have storms and stuff like that, barricades, all sorts of equipment that you might be taking from point A to point B, that you don't want to have to throw into a police vehicle. That, like I said, it's already full of a lot of technical equipment that you don't want to have to throw stuff on top of it. But it just helps do the job a little bit better.
All right. My second question is the LPR. Is that something that is on a wish list, or is that something you have ordered? Is that for the license plate reader?
About 9 years ago, we got it approved through our Board of Police Commissioners. They approved the purchase of one. We're probably the only department in the area that does not have them. And if you're not familiar with an LPR, it's a license plate reader. It goes on the back of, or the front of a patrol vehicle. It records any license plate that goes by the vehicle or that the squad car goes by. And it'll tell you if it's, doesn't have insurance, if the operator is wanted. It really is a tool to really beef up your activity and it's a crime fighter. But
You're in trouble. But is that something, so now it is ordered? Is that something you plan
it's
on
something I
getting
want to
this year?
revisit. It was
Okay.
approved.
But it hasn't necessarily.
It's a good purchase with asset forfeiture money.
Yeah, we may decide that we don't like
It
that.
won't cost the town. It
I'm
won't
not
cost the
trying to-
town any money.
And then my last question, Ray, is I was looking at the indicators, and I found it fascinating that from 2 years ago to last year, all the incidents, whether it was DUI, MVA, radar stops, were considerably down. And yet this year, you're projecting a 20 to 30% increase in all the categories. Is that because you're going to be out looking for us? What happened?
Well, first of all, you're going to have young, and I hate to use aggressive, but you're going to have young and enthusiastic police officers coming on the ship. We have 2 right there now that are in our FDO program. All right, they're being trained to stop vehicles, and that's one of the good things about Woodbridge. I says, we don't have a lot of crime. I says, but one of the things that we do that I think really affects the crime rate in this town is motor vehicle. All right, we stop a lot of cars. That old cliche that the people in the area towns that have a lot of crime, they don't come into Woodbridge because they know they're going to get stopped. I mean, I have friends that tell me, he says, when I go through Woodbridge, I slow down. I says, well, that's great, because that means the police department's doing their job. So if you take that philosophy, and I try to, push it into my, my projection, I'm hoping that the activity does go up. The DWIs go up, everything goes up. And it makes the town a little safer.
I'm not even
They're coming after you.
That's right.
They'll read it right off your license if you're not careful.
Right.
It really does make the town much safer.
On your staffing levels, right? But we still have 1 officer full-time at Amity and 1 officer full-time at Beecher.
Yes, we do.
So that's where so every day we have 2 officers that are basically stationed at both
Correct.
Amity and Beecher.
But they are sometimes called to other.
Oh yeah, they are both available with the understanding in their MOAs to each of those 2 schools that if they're needed, they're pulled.
So the officer at Beecher, what does he do? At the high school, there's always things you got to be keeping your eye on. But I'm just curious, what is he? Does he keep himself busy? I mean,
The public
or is it boring?
is watching this, and I'm going to tell you, Officer Lynch is probably one of the best community policing things that we do in this town today. The contact that he has with the parents, he does the DARE program, which is some people will say it's not a good program, but he does. He's affecting those kids at that age, that 6th grade, 5th grade. He teaches internet safety, and he goes to a lot of these after hours functions. The ice cream social and everything like that he's at. It's a wealth of good things that come out of it, and that's what and I can say that in the president's task force on 21st century policing, one of the pillars was to gain the trust of the community, and what better way to gain the trust of the community is to have Vinnie Lynch over there dealing with those young kids. And then we're gonna be able. We have an excellent officer over at the high school too. So even though you say that, we have dedicated those people over to the school, but in Woodbridge, those are our big things. We don't have them all, but we have the high school. We have the grammar school, and it's an old cliche, but it's our future. And I think both of them are doing a fantastic job. Great community policing. Hopefully that answered the question.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the Fire Commission. Next tab, 12:30.
Evening.
Hello.
Okay, well, I guess we'll hit some of the highlights. We'll go from there. Regular clerical, we added a full-time administrative assistant as of July 1, I believe it was July of last year, or August 1. It was at some point we added a full-time administrative assistant to the fire department. So we got rid of part-time clerical and moved it over to the regular clerical. So when you see that number. The other one is part-time all other. That's the engineers that maintain the trucks, fuel the trucks, do the light repair on it, light bulbs, minor wiring, stuff like that. We're anticipating that going up about $500 more for next year, just because the apparatus, the fleet is getting older. We're having we're just having multiple issues with it. Data processing, we're anticipating data processing being at $20,000 for next year. We budgeted $20 last year. We came in, we were approved for 16, but we're still anticipating $20,000 for data processing for this upcoming year. That maintains the servers. They come out once every other month, and we have on-call support and online support. So if something goes down, we pick the phone up and we call them.
Sure, medical expense. Is there one doctor who does this, or is
Yeah, we contract with Yale New Haven Occupational Health in Hampton or New Haven. So the guys all have to go for a physical once a year. So we actually added 4 new firefighters over the last 3 months. And once a year they get a full physical, and if you're over 50, you get a stress test every year. 40 to 50, you get it every 2 years, and under 40, you get it once every 3 years. So, cleaning custodial is going to go up. We were told that it's going to go up a few dollars each month, a couple $100 each month. Repair maintenance machinery. This is a tough line to budget for. As you can see, we're projected to expend $89,000. We came to you a couple months ago with the repairs to engine 9 with the brakes, with a transmission leak, the emergency lighting. So it's a tough line to budget for. The fleet is getting older. We're anticipating, we had an adopted budget of 60. We're going to expend roughly $89,000 this year in that line, and it's almost a guesstimate, but we're almost anticipating about $68,000 next year. We have some tires that.
The book says 65,000 because that was before you had the issue with that. Just so everybody knows that the projected budget for that line for 15-16 should be 89,000.
Correct.
Is that what we got here?
It says 65 on here.
That's 53,510.
Right.
Correct.
And the 15-16 projected instead of 65 should be 89.
Repair maintenance vehicle, that's the testing line. That is, that does the pump test for the trucks, that does ladder testing, fit testing, the air pack bottle testing, does all our annual DOT inspections. And that line we're anticipating going up a couple $1,000 based on just some of the numbers that we've coming in just for post testing alone. Repair maintenance building. This number 33.5 that we're projected and we're asking for again, we constantly run over that, and that 33.5 is a pretty hard number where we could be at. That does all of the building management system. It does the elevator. It does all the maintenance contracts with the building. um, the fire alarm, the oil water separator pumping, everything comes out of that line. Communication security 54260. That line's going to go up a little bit. We currently are with the S2 system, the door access system, and the security. We have a maintenance contract that does not only the firehouse, it does the new public works facility, and it also does town hall. So there was an added cost to add public works onto that. Professional development and dues, that's where we have live weather monitoring station at the firehouse, and we pay, I think it's like $27.60 a year. So that line we always run over, and then we find money on another line that we have left over to try to cover it. So we're just trying to budget each line so we don't show that we're going over that line consistently. We're right there. Professional development training. The training line, we're expected to be around 32,000 this year. And next year, come July, we have a bunch of firefighters that their EMT certifications are up, and then we all have to get recertified for EMT training. So there is going to be an increase there. There is CPR, AED training associated with that we have to go through the American Red Cross to get our CPR cards. Programs and publicity. This line is strictly for the public. This buys the little red plastic fire hats, buys the pencils, buys the crayons, buys the coloring books that we hand out for you at Block Fire Safety Day. We go out and see the fire marshal along with a couple of firefighters. They see roughly 1,200 kids between the daycares, Beecher School, and everywhere else, Trinity, Montessori. The technical line's going to go up $1,000. That's just based on some increases that we're seeing for foam, drip pans, plug and dike, basic everyday supplies that we have on the trucks. So there is an increase coming on in there. The fire marshal expense, he's asked for an additional $200 for items in the fire marshal's office. That line's been at $3,500 for quite a few years, and we need to increase it just a little bit. Tires. This line's going to fluctuate year to year. In the past, over the last few years, it's been at $2,500. Last year was the first time we jumped to $6,000. This year, we anticipate tires are going up a little bit. We're going to need $7,000. We'll probably have one more big year with tires, and then it's going to go back down probably to about $2,500. Just because for fire apparatus, we have to replace the vehicle tires every 7 years, regardless whether they're good or bad. So the biggest problem we're having with tires right now is we check the date codes on the tire, and what happens is we're running Michelins on our truck, and our date codes aren't, some of them are almost a year old, so that means we would only get 6 years out of the tire rather than 7. So we ordered tires, we're waiting for them to come in, so there is going to be a lag in there.
Could you explain that again, about 6 years instead of 7?
What happens is just because we buy the tire today, if it's sitting in a warehouse for a year or 9 months, we're still going to get 6 years. It goes off of the date code. It doesn't go off the time when you buy the tire. It goes off when the tire is manufactured.
So do you check them now
Yes.
so that you don't get year-old tires?
We check them
You
all
get
the time
7
now.
years?
Yes.
Okay.
So you buy tires directly?
We buy them through like Tosi Tire. We buy them through Pete's Tire Barn. We buy them wherever we can get the best price we can get them.
They mount them and everything for you?
Yeah, they come out, they mount them and everything.
And then the tires that are coming off the vehicles are still in good shape.
So we donate
because of
them to
low
Public
mileage.
Works.
The last ones were replaced. I walked into the bay and saw a stack of tires, and I thought they were silly me. I thought they were the new tires waiting to be installed, and they're actually the old tires that had come off the vehicles because there was.
Can't put it on eBay, huh?
We could. We actually donated them to Public Works.
I mean,
so they
Public
could use
Works
them down
uses
there.
them.
They're
And
running the same tires.
they're not, because they're not public safety, they don't have that 7-year requirement, and they're still, and they put more miles on them too, but there's still plenty of life left.
State bid waiver pricing for tires that's available, no? I'm not challenging you, I'm just, sometimes there's the state pricing for these kinds of things that you get better deals on, it doesn't apply to tires?
I don't know.
Do you know?
Good question. I'm not sure
I have
about
a
the,
question.
I don't know if you have special, bigger, I don't know if they just have,
Regular
I don't know, we could
tires
look into
or,
it.
because
Well, we
that's,
could check.
Yeah, we could
I mean,
check.
certainly the
We'll-
equipment is.
We'll confirm that.
yeah, we'll check that, yeah. That's a good
Can I ask
question.
one other question as long as I'm talking?
Sure.
So is live weather monitoring something different than we all have on our phones?
Yeah, we actually have a meteorologist, and we have the whole weather set up at the firehouse. The next time you come by, I can show it to you.
What do you mean you have a meteorologist? You have
Well,
a
it's like
person who's sitting over there looking out the window?
it's the same, basically the same thing where the weather people are getting
Gotcha.
their weather from.
Okay, so it's actually
So
their
yeah, so if we had an
system.
incident where, say we had a gasoline leak or a propane spill, or even let's take regional water, right? If we had a
Right.
fire down at regional water and we had a chlorine leak,
Right.
we could actually track the plume and follow the wind
Gotcha.
speed and figure out all of that.
Okay, thank you.
I asked the same question.
Well,
I did.
because I can tell you what it is,
Yeah.
right? But I get
But
what you're
That's a
saying.
little more in detail.
Yeah.
What you get for free is just,
I
is
gotcha.
not a good, you
I
get
got
what you
you.
pay
Well,
for.
for $3,000, I want to know that there's something
Yeah.
important about it, so, or whatever it was, $2,800.
Okay, natural gas in the building, we converted last year to natural gas. We figured we'd be at 13 last year. We're anticipating about 15,000 for this year. So this is our first year of natural gas, switching over from oil, so it was a learning curve.
Well, speaking of oil,
Sure.
we had a discussion the other night about oil tanks. What's the situation with that oil tank over there? I know you said. you
The
might
oil
wanna
tank
use
is, the oil tank is still on the ground. We have to figure out exactly what we're gonna do with it. There is oil left in the tank. I'm sure we can pump it out, and if we have an oil tank in town that we need to do that with. We talked at one point of putting in another diesel tank, using the exact same tank because the tank is pretty new, and so we could fill the trucks up or even have it in case of an emergency on a disaster, would hold another 2,500 gallons of fuel for us.
That's in the front of the building, though,
Yeah.
right?
So there are different ways we can do it where the actual pump would actually be in the ground. So we haven't really figured out exactly where we're going
Is
with
this
it
thing
yet.
encased? Or-
Yeah,
Yes.
it's double walled and
So we don't
everything.
have to worry about a leak?
No,
Yeah, it's gotta be all new.
right.
So-
It's 7 years old, I think.
We would rather repurpose it than go through the expense of
You know, that's the whole front of the place, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's removing it.
Did you say it's right near that memorial?
It is.
But we think being able to use it as a reserve for emergency purposes is,
I mean, the other thing
gets
we
good
could do-
value out of the existing.
The other thing they can do is they can clean the tank. Once they suck the oil, they can clean it. They can crush the tank and fill it. So we'd rather use it. I mean, the tank is in great shape. There's nothing wrong with it.
You know, when we have storms coming and we're anticipating, we understand that, Public Works gets the tanks topped off. But in in one of these blizzards where we're shut down for days and days and days, we might not be able to get a delivery. So it's really, it would be a good idea to have a reserve and not to depend on getting resupplied in the middle of an emergency. It's not something we'll use, that happens, every day or every year. But if we can do it at minimal expense, but that's, to answer your question, because that's in the sort of long-term plan.
Only because there's been a lot of questions about how many tanks are there in town, and there's a danger, should we be digging them up? And I know that one came up, and I think
Fair.
you said it's a safe one.
That's a
Yes.
fair question.
Yeah, and it's also monitored. So if the inner wall breaks, we would get notified immediately.
We're not going to lose any sleep over that one.
Yeah.
I know you want to change hydrants, right?
Hydrants, we have to change. Hydrants, this is a tricky line to come up with. And what we did is when we came back to you guys last year, in June to hit contingency to cover the overage in hydrants. What happens is RWA, for years, they never went up on their prices. And for the last 3 years, they've gone up on us each year, roughly 7.5% to almost 8%. So once we submitted our budget last year, we didn't know if they were going to go up or we were going to stay the same. We anticipated it staying the same. RWA couldn't tell us at that point, so it actually ended up going up almost 7.5%, almost 8%. So we had to cover that last year, and now what we're being told by RWA this year is it's gonna go up again, another 7.5% to 8%. And 3 years ago, it went up 7.5%. So we're really in that 7.5% to 8% range, but they can't tell us definitely if it's gonna go up 7.5%, 8%, it could go up 10%. I think the first year it started going up, it went up almost 14%. So it all depends if they get the approval to increase. If they get the approval to increase it, they do it, and then we end up paying the bill later on. Right now, there was a memo sent to Tony dated January 13th. I don't know if you guys have seen this.
Yeah, he
Okay.
made it up tonight.
Okay, so we anticipate that line should be at 84,467.88. And that covers last year and this year's increases.
And it assumes the same amount of water.
Yeah, we don't, it doesn't go by the amount of water we use. It's based on how many feet of pipe we have in town. So the main lines that are in town that feed the hydrants, that's how it's based on. So we could use 1 million gallons of water, it doesn't matter. We can use 1,000 gallons of water, it's the same cost. What we're paying for is access to have the water in the pipe for the hydrant.
If you
Oh,
have
that's
the second
interesting.
sheet of the memo, there's a breakdown of where those costs come from.
No, the other sheet is for the current year,
Correct.
and that will be a transfer request at a later meeting.
But we pay, and they're smaller amounts, but we pay fees for on all the town buildings. So for Beecher, there's $575 for this building, and it's 287. Public Works is 834, but the big bill is the fire hydrants, and that's 36,000 each.
And how many fire hydrants do you have?
Each.
Roughly 135.
We have 135 fire hydrants? Well, there's Andy's, there's Beecher,
Yeah.
that's 2.
There's Rimmon.
I always think of it as
Yeah,
your
you got your own
hydrant, it's in front
fire
of your house.
There's Rimmon Road. There's one out here. There's one on the corner. There's one
There's
at the
really
firehouse.
130,
Lower Woodbridge is quite a few.
Basically, the flats all have fire hydrants.
Right.
Up to 330 Emily Road.
oh,
It stops right at that driveway, and the hydrant goes. There's another hydrant up at Brighton Gardens that we can hit.
so what was the number again, 100 and what?
135.
Wow, thank you.
So this is.
It sounds like a lot of hydrants.
impressed. I
It
didn't
sounds
know
like a
we had
lot,
that
but
many.
there's really not. It only covers like 8% of the town has fire hydrants.
Oh,
It's not a lot.
And then this bill is more than 10% of our fire department budget.
Yeah, I'm kind of saying, what happens now, there's always been this issue, these swimming pool guys that fill up their trucks.
That's been an ongoing issue, and we've been talking to RWA about that.
what's the issue?
That's a
Swimming, in other words, if you have a swimming pool, and the swimming pool, he goes to a fire hydrant.
Correct.
Is it on Litchfield Turnpike?
yeah. The one to fill
Near
up
the
the
Darwin
hydrants
House,
is
I
on
think?
Lunar Drive,
Okay.
and to fill the tree trucks,
Yeah.
the spray is
Landscapers.
on Litchfield Turnpike.
They're
So they
allowed-
they go and fill up on their own, but they don't pay, right?
They do pay. What they
They
do
do
is
pay.
we issue them a permit every
I
year,
see.
usually in April. We issue them a permit. I think the permit, we went up on it last year. I think it's $100 per permit. And it's based upon how many gallons of water you're gonna
Oh.
use. So it's basically on the honor system in Woodbridge.
Good faith estimate.
Right, so we don't get beat, our regional water could get beat, but this went back a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, where RWA wanted to stop it and send them to designated fill sites where they're getting metered, so they have to punch a code into the hydrant to be able to get water out, and they get charged for the amount of water that comes out. Well, the problem with that is, for Woodbridge, if you're a Woodbridge resident and you have a pool, the closest fill site is like Cheshire. I think there's one in downtown New Haven. They're not close to Woodbridge, so the resident, if you need water for your pool, are paying higher trucking fees to go get the water to bring it back in, where they could fill up in town and fill your pool, you're actually saving some money.
And there's also the environmental cost of, for the trucks hauling that water too, so.
So it is a catch-22. It's not like, even if we had a metered hydrant, it's not like we're getting the money and it's offsetting the cost. The money goes directly to the money would go at that point to RWA. RWA would charge the hauler however much water they're using. Even though they're using our hydrant, we have to issue the permit.
So did I understand correctly then that we don't actually pay for the amount of water used?
No.
We only pay for the linear feet of
Correct.
pipe? And you're estimating that for each permit you give out, the value is $100 that they would otherwise have to pay if they went to the filling site somewhere else?
They have to get a permit regardless whether they're gonna, if they're gonna fill, they need a permit. RWA, the fill site comes in for RWA, so if Mr. Esposito here goes and fills up his truck, he's gonna get a bill from Regional Water for, say, $250 to fill his 6,000 gallon pool truck up, where right now he's not getting a bill to do that.
Well, he doesn't have to, he's got his own hydrant.
I have my own hydrant.
He just
Our
runs a
rates
hose.
are pretty low. You charge $100 and these people are making quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
And because that
We actually
$100
were charging
is
less,
within-
and we had this discussion last year, and we actually increased the permit fee.
But that's a good deal. You're making money. Yeah, that's not
Do we
per
keep the money or
use,
do we
right?
pay that out?
No, the money goes back into the
Goes
general
into us,
fund.
Yeah, general fund, yeah.
So that's
So,
a rate.
there's only,
that we
I want to say there's only like 8 or 10 people that pull permits to haul. And if you have more than one truck, you have to pull more than one permit. Then it has to get inspected usually by Regional Water. They issue a permit, making sure you have the correct backflow preventers, so you can't contaminate the water supply.
So do the haulers get billed separately from RWA for their
They don't.
estimated water use?
Okay.
I know, it sounds like a revenue. we're
So-
charging.
You're not kidding. You don't have to pay for your
But this
product.
is a line that we really have no control over. It's basically what it is, it is. And then these numbers really, if we have a bad winter, like we did when we had the blizzard and we had snow plows or payloaders knock over hydrants, we're responsible to pay those fees to get it on. Unless we know who hit the hydrant, then we can go after them and the insurance comes in. But a fix on a hydrant's anywhere between $500 and $6,000. So if they just snap the hydrant off, it's no big deal. If they break the stem going into the hydrant and they gotta pull the road up, it could be $6,000.
Is the town insured on some of these hydrants covered by our insurance?
Yes,
Yeah,
And what's the deductible on a given hydrant, like any
I
other
think
deductible?
$1,000.
yeah.
And if it's a car accident, we can also try and get the
Correct.
responsible.
I was just wondering if there was some offset.
While we're on water, I should also note that, there's metered water and unmetered water. We do a water bill for our regular domestic use, like every building does. But the hydrants are off the meter. Filling the tanker trucks inside the bays is off the meter. Which was an argument when we built the building, because they didn't want to give us unmetered water inside the building. They wanted us to go fill it from a hydrant outside the building, which is inefficient.
Not a good idea.
Okay, Sean, why don't you go over the capital outlay?
Sure.
Before you do, can I just ask one question? So are we at a new total for 17 proposed at 798 change, Tony? Is that the number you come up with? The new total being 798 for the proposed? I think I added 21,000 for the maintenance and 7,000 for the hydrants. So I added like 28,000 total.
No, you would add the 7,000 to the department request.
Well, but total, what do you have for a total?
777.
So you didn't add, there's no new 21,000 for that
That's under
maintenance?
projected.
So, yeah, I was talking about projected.
Oh,
I got
So my total projected, I can,
770.
We added 24. So that would make it 770, 586?
770.
770, 586.
Does that have
For
the new hydrant
projected.
number in it?
Projected.
And then you'd have to add roughly $7,000 to the department request, making it 777,222, roughly.
Close enough, yeah.
Right. But remember, the FY projected, we have that repair for engine 9, which is 28,000.
Yeah,
yeah, we have that.
that's what we added in.
Yeah, okay.
Before we go on to that, this is sort of a side issue, but I did get a letter from a resident who he had a photograph of a Woodbridge hydrant and an orange hydrant. He showed how nicely painted they are in orange. So it was something I wanted to talk with you about. Betsy's going to call you, but I didn't realize we had so many hydrants. But I still think it's worth talking about because it does look very different.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. About 15 years ago, we had the Boy Scouts paint the hydrants, and we just got a new pickup truck at the time. Actually, it was back in '96. It was more than 15 years ago, '96, and we just got the brand new pickup truck, and we sent one firefighter out with a couple of the Boy Scouts. You think painting a hydrant is easy? It's rough. The truck came back, it had yellow paint all over it in the upholstery. It was bad. And
you don't want it painted shut either,
the problem
right?
with the hydrant paint is it doesn't dry.
Oh.
So, like when you paint your wall and it dries in an hour, hydrant paint takes like weeks to dry, which we found out. It's like a thick lacquer, and it just sits there, and as soon as you touch it, I mean, our tools were covered for probably 2 years in it.
So like everything else, it's much more complicated than it appears.
It
but
does.
maybe we'll
And what we did actually back in '96 is we have different size mains that feed the hydrants with pressure. So if you saw a red top hydrant, stop, hang on, we got to think about how much pressure we're getting out of the hydrant if we're going to get the enough flow. A green hydrant meant go, and a yellow hydrant meant, yeah, you're okay, you could go. So.
Once again, HB 430. Okay.
Sean, does this number have the new hydrant number in it?
No.
On the request?
775 retail is the number. So it's up there. Under the capital outlay, rescue roof saw. That's a chainsaw with a guard on it. So when we have a fire, we can cut the roof. Our other saw is about 10 years old. It's having issues starting and everything else. We need to replace that in July. Same thing with the K12 saw. K12 saw is like a big circular saw. It's like what you see on the roads, how they cut the roads. But the difference is it will cut through shingles. It will cut through metal decking. It will cut through concrete. It cuts through all of our other stuff that's not wood. And we use that saw also at accidents. If we got to cut a guardrail off or we got to cut a piece of the car, we can use that also. The hazmat decon pool, our other pool is about 10 years old. It's got a couple holes in it. It's really not staying together. We need to replace that pool. And actually right now what we're using are like the kiddie pools, the kiddie pools. And the problem that we have is if we have an incident, we're having a tough time taking the water to get rid of it. So we have to trap the water.
So what do you decontaminate in the pool?
If we have some type of hazmat call where if we're dealing with, we get probably 1 or 2 a year where if we get a suspicious powder and the guys have to gear up. If we have, I'm trying to think of the most recent one we had.
Propane leaks, gasoline.
Not
spills,
propane, oil leaks. If we have to go in there, we can't just trip around with all the oil all over us. There's quite a few. It doesn't happen often. It happens, like I said, maybe once a year.
So how does
a
that
year
work?
at the most.
Firefighter will stand in the pool and gets hosed off?
So
A firefighter gears up in like a hazmat suit, like one of those white or yellow suits. Has the air pack on the back, underneath the suit. They're totally geared up. They're taped up. They have gloves on. They're 100%, and they can go into a situation like that. And then when they come out, we have to rinse them off, clean them off, and then we cut the suit out and throw it out.
And then what do you do with the water that's in the pool?
If it's contaminated, DEP usually shows up and they'll tell us what to do. And if we got to get a private contractor, we bring a private contractor in to suck the water out of the pool.
But either way, a kiddie pool does not lend itself to this.
No,
situation.
it's actually really slippery when you're standing up with boots on, and you're all over the place on it.
Gotcha.
Okay. Bullock's Fire Trainer. This is more for firefighter training. This is a unit, and we've been using the country club to train in on the upstairs to do search and rescue. We have a house on Petco Road we've been training in. What this is it's like a big box, and it simulates a fire in it, and it comes with a hose and a special type of fire nozzle where it's all infrared. So it trains the guys to drag the hose in with them and find the seat of the fire and actually simulate putting the fire out. instead of using water and destroying property, it's actually a nice tool to use where they're actually training. It's like an actual fire. It looks like an actual fire, but it's a unit, and the infrared light goes and it shows it putting out, and there's a smoke machine with it, so it simulates the whole thing.
Is it one single firefighter at a time using it, or is it?
No, it's multiple. So you can have, if we were to go into the country club and use this, right, we would have realistically 2 or 3 teams of
Right.
3 guys dragging the lines with a couple guys outside feeding the lines in, so multiple people would be able to use it.
So they actually get the experience of,
Oh, absolutely.
just like you would in a fire.
Yes.
No, nothing.
Do they have to be trained on this specific device, Sean?
It's pretty easy. What it is it's basically a weighted hose, and it looks just like a regular fire nozzle. All it does is instead of putting water out, it emits a light, an infrared light,
Oh.
and you can shoot the water at it.
Was that the question? Or did that answer the question?
That's what I was wondering.
It's not hard to use. It's really easy.
So it really tries to simulate
Yeah,
An
that's the
actual-
idea.
what they'd actually be doing.
The Monitor replacement, I don't have mine on me right now, but it's the little gadget we carry on the side of our belts. You'll see all the volunteer firefighters have them on. That's how we get notified when there's a fire. The tone will go over, it will beep, and then dispatch will come on and tell us where the call is and what the nature of
And
it
these
is.
you replace so many
And
every
these are, we're on a replacement plan every year. We replace 5 to 6 of them every year.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions for Sean?
I have one question, John, about the indicator. From this year, God bless you, to next year, why is the projection 20% less in responses and calls? It's just.
We had an issue with that.
Or-
I think it was we're estimating 500. Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, it looks like it went from 500 to 400, like that.
No, that's wrong. This is the
That's
new
what I
one.
figured maybe it was
Yeah.
So you're hoping for, you're actually projecting an increase or around the same?
We're expecting around the same.
Okay.
If we have a storm, we'll usually jump up maybe to 600, 650.
Speaking of which, did you have any issues with the storm?
No. We were set, ready to go, and everything was fine.
Anything else?
One quick question, Chuck. Your gas, 13.5. We've been seeing folks come in reduced gas, I guess because of the price of gas. I don't know why exactly, but
Price of gas.
price of gas, so I figured, but is diesel, is there no reduction for the diesel? I'm just saying, because
We're talking about
folks are coming in with a reduced.
55210. I don't know what we
55210.
usually.
I typically review with all the.
Yeah, he goes
departments.
over all those, right?
I'll go through that with Sean, and we'll review their usage and our current price. When he did the budget, may not have had our updated pricing on it.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, rather than do the country club now, Warren's here, and let's have Warren come up and do his presentations. Starting with Public Works 1310. And did you have any issues with the storm, Warren?
No, everything went smoothly.
Okay. Warren has a 0.26% decrease. So are there any highlights you want to run by us, Warren?
Yeah, if you look at the engineering line item, we had a projected expenditure increase there because we did some engineering on land and street for speed humps and speed table. So that reflects that, and then it drops back down to our normal request. In the 53,610, the rental equipment, everything there, I'm showing a reduction, but we won't have final numbers until we go out to bid for services. So those might have to be adjusted. I'm sorry? This year it was put in for the sweeper that contracted because we had money in place that we could initiate a lease agreement if we had, but we had nothing to follow up on that until the budget was approved for future years. So we left it status quo. On line 55-160, there's some changes there. The cost of salt, treated salt and regular salt increased on us, and I'm carrying those numbers over for next year because we don't know where those numbers are going to fall. All of the utilities, basically, we set those numbers
because we have no hard information, so they're estimates. I think those numbers are all gonna go down because we don't see the actual usage, so I think there's gonna be a significant decrease across the board on those. Because we had nothing, we had only like 1 quarter when this budget was prepared to project what electrical and heat and everything else was gonna be for the building. And those are the highlights in the public works.
How's the building working out now? 'Cause it's sort of big storm.
It worked out good.
Yeah.
It worked out good. In fact, we loaded the trucks prior to the storm, and that way there everybody went home, and we had no lag time. When I called everybody in, we organized in our break room. We went over what our plan for the storm was going to be, when we were going to take our breaks, when we were going to take our meals, and it worked out very good.
And the building in general, any issues,
Oh, there's some minor issues that are still being worked on. You know, you get that with any new
Yeah,
building. You work all the little quirks out. But everything has been going along nicely. The men seem very satisfied. I can see the difference in the equipment because everything is housed inside. So the startup times, you don't have to pre-warm trucks. You don't have to de-ice them. In general, safety is a good issue, and everything being under a canopied environment, our state of readiness for storms is much, much better.
Great.
Question.
Yes.
Do Public Works people, when there's an emergency or or a snowstorm that's overnight, do they sleep in that building?
Yes and no. If it depends. Some people are close enough that they go home. There are no sleeping quarters, but we sleep, on the furniture that's in there, or you have to sit in the truck.
Because I got a comment one time from one of the workers and said, Mrs. Kane, for the millions of dollars this building is, we don't have a mattress to sleep on when we have to stay overnight.
Correct.
I just thought
There was no planning in the design for that, because most of our activities are out of the building,
Yeah, I know.
and there are, it's a matter of convenience, but when we come in off the road to take our breaks, you're there for 16 hours before we take a break, and then you're only there for 4 hours before you go back out on the road. It's not like you're going into a rested sleep. You are trying to close your eyes just to take that edge off, to bring back that alertness, so you're not having that eye fatigue and everything else. So you're coming off the road for that. We do take our meal breaks and things like that, but the sleep time on a long storm, like this last storm was almost 24 hours we were there. So the men did get their rest period, and we usually, in general, we try to come off the road around 11 o'clock at night. So
This was a comment that I got from last winter.
oh yeah, well, it hasn't changed.
Just thought I'd
Okay,
put that out.
any other questions for Warren on Public Works?
I have one question on your letter. I was just interested when I read your letter about the diseases that are spreading through the area and that are becoming more prevalent, that you are seeing more trees that are going to have to be removed.
Yes.
Is that becoming a more serious issue? I know you had
Yes,
talked
it
about
is.
it once before.
Yes, it is. The ash trees in town, you may not see a tree that physically appears healthy today. You can come back next month and that tree will be totally infested. It'll start dropping limbs off the crown. And
Disease that's overcoming the state.
it's the emerald ash borer, and both the people that work with us for the tree removals and our general observations, there are a lot of ash trees in town. And this could exponentially increase if the disease, there are some methods to try to treat it and save a tree, but it's costly and you have to stay on top of it. If the tree has any visible signs of it being infested, you can't make it come back. It's going to be a loss. So some of the trees that we may see are healthy today, a year from now, those trees are going to be disasters. They're going to have to come down. That's why I requested an increase just specifically in the tree work. This year here, the board's just approved a transfer for me, and that money is already being spent just to deal with the trees that are existing on my list. I know that the numbers are going to be where I've requested or possibly a little higher.
Thanks.
Okay, let's move on to waste management. Pretty cut and dry at 3.24% decrease. Anything you want to mention there, Warren?
Yeah, the big thing here is our the tonnages have been modified in both, obviously, our municipal solid waste has gone down and recycling has gone up, so, which is good, you know, for everybody around. Tip fees can't be hardly established because that's something, if Tony can confirm that, I think it's a contract that has to be agreed upon.
Part of the regional service out of Bridgeport, and the tip fee is currently $61.50. Is our current tip fee for our garbage, and it's down from several years back.
But in trying to create tighter parameters on what we project in the budget, those numbers reduced, and there's like a little bit of a track record, so I'm trying to hold the lower numbers rather than stay on the high side. And that's that, you know, everything that we do, both in all phases of the bulky waste disposal, the tip fees for municipal waste, and all our recycling materials. So basically, there's slight reductions across the board on that. And the same thing applies with the utilities. Obviously, if there's any reduction in rates, that's going to influence a lower cost on the numbers that I've provided.
Any questions on waste management? Okay, remediation.
Remediation.
Surely disappearing.
Yes, we were able to close wells, and the only thing we're dealing with right now is we have the oil tank remediation at the center building, and we do have the town hall here. There's an oil tank that has to come out, and we're anticipating that monitoring wells would have to be put in there. So it's the cost of doing the monitoring service at those locations. And I believe we're basically looking at some of our wastewater disposal would be probably put in that line item. And I don't know whether it's going to be finalized in there or the general engineering services in the waste management budget, because typically that's where we've been taking it out.
My favorite budget that we looked at all year.
Used to be a monster.
Because of the reduction?
Used to be a monster when we had the gas leak.
Yeah. So it's nice that we're getting the positive results, even on the wells where we've done the remedial work with the oil tanks. You know, those should not come back with any significant cost.
Okay.
Thank you, Warren.
Thank you for your time.
Great job.
Thank you.
You batted 1,000.
He came for less.
Okay, let's back up to 1192 Country Club. Tony, you want to just run through
Yeah,
this?
certainly.
This is not the Tony Genovese show.
So, thanks. I prepared the Country Club of Woodbridge budget for its current use through December 31st. That's when the contract is up with Casper. So I have in there the final payment for that would be due in the 2017 year, which is $45,000. Then that's for September of 16. The rest of the utilities in here and maintenance assumes a once January comes, somewhat of a minimal use of the facility. So this largely depends on what you decide to do with the facility and with the golf course, but those are the assumptions built into this budget.
So the budget bottom line is assuming that Casper will leave at the end of
Correct.
December and will
Correct.
basically shut the building. This is what the budget.
Correct.
Other than keeping it.
It'll have
at
a minimal level of heat and some minimal electricity for pumps and that sort of thing. That's the assumption. Obviously, once you decide which direction you want to go in, we could change this to reflect that.
So just to add to that, should we decide to go ahead, Billy Casper is interested in continuing the contract if we choose to do that. And just to move things along, I did want to mention, since we're together, both boards, different commissions have asked for updates, the kinds of updates we've been having for our two boards. So Tony is going to be presenting the information that the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance have already received to different boards and commissions. We're going to try to combine them so it's not several different meetings, but have some joint meetings of boards and commissions so they can hear it. And also, so we can hear if they have any questions or issues from the point of view of their commissions, and we can fill in that information and have a pretty complete package at the end of that, and then take it to the public for public meetings. So just thought I'd
It's a good
update
idea.
you on
It's a good
on the
idea.
steps.
Okay, anything on Country Club? All right, so let's move to Board of Selectmen 1110.
No, really, who's calling town hall at this hour?
So I don't know, any questions on this? I don't think there's any labor negotiations.
That's a contractual
That's
increase.
contractual.
Yep.
Everything else is pretty self-explanatory.
There's a small increase in regional services. For regional services is largely COG and current municipalities and all the regional boards that the town belongs to. It's not much other activity.
Any other questions on that? As far as capital, the only item in there is
It's just open space.
open space,
Yeah.
and $1 million in 18, 20, and 22. So I don't think there's any questions on that.
Next year.
Hmm?
We could talk about that next year.
Yeah.
It's not at least pressing.
Okay, let's move on to employee benefits, which is 1710. Why don't you just run through, Tony, who this covers and what it
Oh,
covers?
certainly. This
I
is
get
a
confused sometimes, Board of Ed, townwide,
Sure.
police.
So these are employee benefits for all town employees. Does not include the Woodbridge Board of Education, nor obviously it doesn't include Amity, but includes the police department, the library, town hall, public works, pretty much all other employees. And it has all of the various employee benefits that are provided, including the FICA and Medicare match, retirement, health insurance, has an OPEB contribution amount, which is, as Scott indicated earlier, towards other post-employment benefits, which is largely retiree health care and workers' compensation.
Why don't you just run through which of these are not final?
So the ones that are not final are retirement, because we haven't gotten the match yet from the state.
Okay.
So the state will send us like a payroll match percentage. So they'll say 12%, 10%, whatever it is. It largely depends on market returns and their activity. And so I remember when the market was doing well, it was a match of. Right now, the employees pay 3.25%. I think at maybe 3%, 2.25%, 3%, around that neighborhood. And the town match was maybe the same, 3-4%. But when the market started doing poorly, the percent went up to 10%, 12%. So it largely depends on interest investment returns. Police are generally higher than 10 general town employees, because police officers tend to retire quicker and tend to be paid on average higher than the average town employee. But this is a risk pool that we belong to with several other municipalities. And the state administers the pool, and it is their best funded pool because we all pay into it and they don't contribute. So that's retirement. Health insurance is, we're currently in negotiations. And so this is a big topic for our negotiations. So this is sort of assumes, there's certain assumptions here that may or may change with healthcare. So this is very much an open item until the negotiations are completed.
Now, let me ask a question. The plan we have is considered a Cadillac plan?
It would have, along its current trend, reached a Cadillac tax before it was postponed in 2 years.
Okay. Now, I'm hearing some people are going to be retiring, because if they retire, they get the Cadillac plan. Is that true?
You retire according to the contract you get the plan that with which you retire under.
So it could be a super plan,
Could be.
which would be an incentive for people to retire.
And you know, I didn't realize till you said that, and that means we would pay the penalty on their plan if the Cadillac tax stays in effect
Correct.
for the entire period of their retirement.
No, it only until the person is 65.
Oh,
If
okay.
if the person is 65, then we just provide the supplemental
Right.
part.
Medicare.
But yeah, and it's
Medicare.
drastically reduced.
I forgot
So
that
it's
part of
just
it,
the
but-
years between retirement and 65. But it's nothing we'd anticipated until this came about, and that was, the contracts were in place before,
Right.
Contracts were already in
That's- yeah.
place before the whole Cadillac tax thing came up.
And they've already changed that Cadillac tax plan
Postponed it.
once,
Right.
by postponing it.
Right.
And they're still looking, so that may get changed again, so.
Could, we're not gonna
can't
rely
really worry
on that
about it.
during
There's
this
nothing right.
negotiation period, but that's possible, I
That's
guess.
gonna change for sure, one way or another.
But that's correct, it's per individual, so there, if that holds, it could be
It's
certain.
just a shame that someone who might not be looking to retire has to retire to keep the plan. It makes, yeah, that's happening. It's not only Woodbridge, everywhere. A lot of school teachers are retiring because their plan is gonna go down and, I don't know.
I think the plans are going to change, but hopefully be comparable, funded a little bit differently. I know Tony and Dave Ryan are working on that.
Tony, how many people does this represent?
This represents, general town is probably 50, 60, police is probably,
28.
there's
28
there's
plus.
23 sworn officers plus 3 admin is
And then
26,
dispatchers.
but there's 4 that have a waiver, so it's 22. So police is 22,
22.
Does that count the chief and the
Yeah.
deputy chief and everybody?
yes.
A waiver, Tony, does that mean they're?
That means that,
Spouse's plan?
the waiver means that we offer a waiver of, I don't know, it's not very much, but if you decide to offer, if you don't take the health plan, you get an incentive to not take the health plan of $1,500 or $1,800, depending on your coverage type.
So you take your spouses if you have it.
Correct, if the incentive is for the individual to use their spouse's plan if they have one. And that does happen. We have 4 in the police department and maybe 6 in town hall, so maybe 10 people on it.
That's good.
Yeah.
And workers' comp is also an estimate, right?
Correct. Workers' comp, we generally won't have wrapped up until much closer to the end of the year. So that's an estimate also. So those 3 are very much in flux, which is most of the budget.
With a little luck, we might save some money, we'll see.
That's a possibility, yes.
Pardon me?
Is this 10% of the total budget?
Questions on fringe benefits?
That's what I said.
Okay, next is Board of Finance. Which, of course, the main thing there is contingency, and Tony, you put a number in there? and-
Yes, that also relates to our previous discussion, which is, you noticed that none of the departments had salary increases in them or shouldn't have had salary increases in them. And so that is because we are currently in negotiations. So should there be a salary cost of living adjustment in the contracts, it would come from contingency and not from, it's not budgeted in each individual department. So the reason why that's so high is because that's for 2 years worth of increases, because this is the first year we're in, it's in 15, 16, so then next year there will be 2 years, plus any adjustments to FICA, Medicare, retirement, all the other benefits that are related to salary level are also, would come out of here.
So,
That makes sense?
well, what's confusing to me is that we know our contingency, our pure contingency fund is not 425.
Correct.
So isn't some of this 425 for salary increases?
Correct.
So then why do we have to put 2 years in?
Because,
Are we gonna have a surplus in that account?
no, because, so let's assume all 425
Yeah.
is salary, is, say 225 if it's used.
Right, let's say our contingency is 200, our pure contingency
Right.
is 200, 225 is for salary.
So then you have another 225 from the prior year that you have to add, and then you have the increase for 17 also in there.
2.5
As,
years
as a
worth.
budget item, you have
As
to
a budget
carry it
item.
I
that
guess I'm
way.
losing how many years we're talking about here.
It's like 2.5 years worth of.
So
I
there's
understand.
there's 2 years in the 17.
So it's like
But how many
225
years is in the
times 2.5.
420? It's that second.
1 year is
225, but
1 year is in 16, and 2 years are in 17. Because the contract's was up in June of 15.
So July 1st of 15, they were due a raise.
Correct.
They didn't get it.
Correct.
July 1st of 16, which is what's coming up, they're doing another raise.
Correct. So that's compounding. So you have
This
two.
is
You have
17.
Oh, I see what you're saying, right. So the raise they would have gotten in 15 would have to be put into 16.
correct.
Is
And
this
then
normal? We never did this before like this, did we?
whenever we've had 2 years of, it's rare, but whenever we've had a
So,
contract.
Okay, I got you now.
That was when the contract renegotiation comes up.
Covers
So whatever the
budget
raise would be
cycle.
for 15, we have a 16, and then we have the increase for
Correct.
16. Hey, okay.
Hey.
So.
We gotta really make sure, because that's gonna be a question at the hearing. Oh my God.
So hopefully it'll be resolved by then.
Oh,
I was gonna ask you, where are you?
Yeah. I mean, I can't give out too many details,
Yeah.
obviously, but
right.
hopefully we'll be resolved by then.
But you had to lay it out this way at this point. I
Correct,
get that.
right.
Yeah, okay.
Because you don't really want to show your ability to pay.
We're gonna, if not, that'll be a tough explanation.
We don't have that ability, so we're not worried about it.
All right, so that's Board of Finance.
Tony, some of the departments, they may see slight increases in salaries because there are some employees that are moving up steps, so we did that.
Correct. Step increases are separate because, but it's assuming the step increase as of the old contract, not the new contract.
Gotcha.
Okay, information systems, we think we all know what that is. Anything you want to mention there, Tony?
There's not really much to add here. There's an increase in telephone because of the full year of the town using the Nutmeg network. And that's our connection to the high-speed internet that the state provides. And based on what I've been hearing about high-speed internet, I just think that's going to grow as a service. And I don't know if you've been hearing a lot about that lately, about high-speed internet and how some parts of Connecticut are not hooked up to it. So that's why that one goes up. But it's not. You see the projected budget is lower because it wasn't a full year. That's about it.
Anything on that? And finally, animal control. Why don't you just give us an update on what's going on there? Yeah, we've applied for a steep grant, hopefully to fix that building, right?
We have. Yep. And we have 3 towns in animal control. It's Bethany or Woodbridge and Derby. And this budget is constructed on a different, well, first, if you look at the total budget, is $234,000 for the operation. That's how much it costs. And in this budget, this is the only department that has the benefits in it because except for the negotiated, obviously it doesn't have the negotiated piece in here, but it has the benefits because it's billed to other towns. And you'll see the total is $234,000 is the budget, and the revenues are split based on a new assumptions for splitting the mainly the differences to payments from Woodbridge and Derby. Woodbridge is Derby rather. We're still in negotiations on that. They have not fully paid their contribution for this year. We're still sort of in negotiation on that. The budget is built on that same assumption, so I'm not sure how that's going to play out. We also have some opportunities with other towns that we're looking into, which may also impact this, but nothing is final at the moment. So this could definitely also change as we proceed.
So they're not paying, they haven't paid us the 71,000, Drew?
Correct.
How much have they paid?
They paid what's equal to last year's, which is, we did change it somewhat significantly, but last year it was 40 47 around.
And they're a little bit behind in that payment.
They paid,
Oh.
paid all
they
that,
paid it?
yeah.
Oh, good.
From 2 years, so it went from 47 to 70 because of the change in
Because
the contract?
they use the service a lot
More often.
more
They
often
have
than
more
we do, and that we just felt it was more equitable split.
And Tony came up with various ways to calculate the fare proportions, and
Calls, population, there's all different ways you
Square
can.
mileage.
but however you did
Right,
it,
right.
Derby's share went up
Significant.
considerably, and
Right.
so they're.
That's good.
So,
So, I don't know, maybe I got lost, but it's 235,
right.
and
So then if you look
we're
at the
saying
revenues.
104.7 is. our-
Yeah, so look at the second to last page. That's a good point. I should
104,
clarify that.
72.
It has the revenues lined up for each town, 104 for Woodbridge, 48 for Bethany,
Right.
72 for Derby. Then we receive about $5,000 in fees, and usually around $4,000 in donations. So that gives you your 234.
Okay, I was just, but in the past, we've been paying half, right?
Correct.
So this is
That's
a-
why we tried to shift the.
This is somewhat of a reduction.
Right.
If
If
you
it
get everybody to
works.
agree to it, if
Correct.
it works.
Right, that's the idea.
Okay.
Right.
The
So
Derby agreed, they just haven't paid it.
they've agreed that, I think they've acknowledged that there's an imbalance. What that imbalance is and exactly how much is paid is where we have to.
They haven't agreed to $71,000.
Correct. Right. But it's hard to deny that, they're bigger than us and just as many calls, and yet we were paying a lot more than they were. So,
So if they don't pay, who makes up the deficit? We do?
Yes.
probably.
Well, the only other option is
Yeah,
Bethany.
they
right?
call it back.
Oh, Bethany, right.
But in theory,
So there you go.
in theory, their incentive is otherwise they have to figure out a different.
Correct. At some point, we have to say,
That's right,
listen,
a different animal control
It's a cheap,
arrangement.
I'll tell you, it's a
throw
cheap.
'em, they're no longer part of the animal
For the
control.
size of Derby.
It's kind of a cost
That's a
benefit
cheap,
thing, I think they probably have to go through.
At some point, right. I mean, they've paid for, they've paid about 47,000 for this year, and we're, halfway through the year.
Right.
So at some point, we'd have to decide whether or not we want to pull a plug on it.
They have to have it, right?
They have to, yeah. They have no other
Right,
choice.
so, right.
Did the
And-
state-
Well, if we
mandate.
could find it
Yeah.
for us, we were trying to find. for-
That's it's another
It's very
solution.
easy,
Correct.
right?
Correct. That's one of the possible
Can't argue with
solutions.
that.
Right.
Tony also calculated if Derby were not part of our animal control, we would not need as much staffing because they are such a big part of the calls. So
Right.
we could save
So we
money
just shift
there.
it that way, and we'd pay a little more, but that's another option.
They use a lot of water, Tony?
It's the Perrier.
They do.
Hey, you have nothing ready on, you have nothing ready on revenue, right, Tom?
I have some very preliminary information I can share with you if you'd like.
Yeah.
It's very
I
preliminary.
confess I went to that tab and it was empty. I don't.
Click blanks.
Rough
Zero
road.
revenue.
That's a big rough road.
Well, is the grand list done yet?
No,
No?
that's one of the issues that's not completed.
Fine, don't worry about it.
And I mostly want to just go through the revenues, just so you see the different sources of revenue and some of the assumptions. The grand list is not complete, so there's no information on the grand list yet. But that'll be probably tomorrow because it's towards the end of the month. And this does not take into consideration the new car tax legislation. So what I plan to do is the governor's budget is typically it's going to be released on the first Wednesday, I think it is, right? So that's next week, and at that point we'll get a lot of information on the car tax implications and a lot of the intergovernmental revenues that you see here.
Car taxes going downtown?
So what's happening is there's a cap on car tax.
Huh?
The state put a cap on car taxes, 32
We got a lot of those kind of cars.
of 32 mils. So anything over 32 mils, we're supposedly going to get reimbursed, but not the whole amount. And so then we have to increase the mill rate for other properties accordingly.
Reimbursed by the state for the difference?
Yeah,
But not the whole difference.
but not the whole
Not the
difference.
whole difference. Right, the state is looking to even out the car tax among towns, so it's not the value of the car. It's that, it's a cap on our mill rate on cars. And for us, that means, and the state is basing their reimbursement on the difference between their cap and the fiscal year 15.
2013 grand list, which is fiscal year 15.
And so even under the preliminary estimate, we would not make up what we need at this point. We're particularly hard hit because of the reval.
Correct, we had
in between.
reval, our mill rate went even higher.
So the way, the difference in the end could come from a higher mill rate on real estate.
So do you have any handle on the actual dollar shortfall?
Actually, what I'm gonna do is,
Approximate?
I'm gonna run it both ways, the budget. And so you'll see, as you go along in the process, exactly how much the difference is.
Okay.
The argument is, that they will make, is that the individual is not paying any more because you're paying less on your car. But the fact is that the mill rate goes up on your house, which is what most people look at, which is what most people identify with.
That's right,
It's
it's against the bigger value.
And it's a bigger
Right, that's
value.
what
Right.
So that, and there is some
So whose
other,
idea is this?
Yeah, well, I'm guessing it's the leasing companies.
there's also a new fund for municipalities, but again, the longevity of the funds and whether they actually make it up is a little bit up in the air.
If the pilot and the tax grants and the manufacturer's inventory grants and the vessel grants and all the other grants are any indication, typically, we do not get reimbursed the amount at the beginning, as it reduces as we go.
And we also already had a cut this year.
And
We had a
right,
cut this year.
we already had a cut this year, right?
So this could be a substantial number, depending on how it shakes out, but it could be a substantial number.
I don't think it's gonna be, I don't think it's gonna be too big this year, but it could grow over time.
Right.
Because it's still tied, the reimbursement
As your
is not
memory.
projected to increase, it's still
Right.
tied to that fiscal year
It's the
15
same fiscal
mill
year
rate.
grand list it's tied to. And the cap goes down next year to 29. So as our mill rate grows, and the cap goes goes down to 29, right?
So what do the cities
Exactly.
do that have mill rates significantly higher than?
Good luck.
That's a good
You're
question.
gonna have to beg the state.
Well,
They have the residents who have a lot of people who
I think,
Those people make out, because a lot of them don't own houses, they rent.
are, right?
but in the end, whoever owns the house.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's the same thing,
Somebody's gotta
right?
pay
It
it,
still
right.
looks
I always
bad,
hate
but-
this, people pay for all this stuff.
Well,
It's those
it'll be interesting to see.
Person who owns their house, that's even worse.
And the
Then their
reimbursement
rent
Whose
goes
idea
up.
was this?
Then their rent's gonna go up. So they gotta pay for it one way or another.
I think the rationale is that there's certainly an appearance, if not an actual, unfair quality of having the same car on one street and the same car one street over in another town, and in some areas paying a dramatically different tax on that same car. You can't make the same argument for homes because they're not, you can't say they're the same.
Don't
But
drive
the,
around.
but the idea,
There's comparable homes.
Right.
I mean, you just look at the assessed value. So someone in New Haven who has a $300,000 house pays more in taxes than someone in Woodbridge who has a $300,000.
I'm not defending it.
I know.
They should have kept their nose out of it, is what they should
I
have
just
done.
wanted you to say that to the camera.
It's very,
More revenue.
it's a perceived inequality, and I think an actual inequality, but one that is very, very difficult to correct. And I know when I worked for the Senate, we spent many, many months trying to come up with a formula that could even it out in some way, and we couldn't do it.
Well, you
It's
do
very
what some other
complicated.
states do, they don't have one.
Or not have one at all, right?
Not have one at all.
Right.
I never
I-
paid a
That
car
makes it
tax
easy.
until I moved.
I didn't either, I was very surprised.
All right.
All right, anything else you want to mention on this? We're good?
You were supposed to leave us on a good note. Come on, there's gotta be something you can say that makes us happy.
There's not much here that'll leave you on a good note, but there's a lot more information as we go along.
Thank you all.
Yikes.
Somebody make a motion to adjourn?
We don't have to.
Move second.